If you've ever left a meeting wondering, how did we spend an hour on that? Congratulations, you've experienced one of the most common and most invisible ways teams waste their time. And we even have a name for it. Stick around and we'll unpack what it is, why it happens, and what your team can do to avoid it. What's up, UX fam? Welcome to another edition of the Cognition Catalog, where every week we'll dig into a new cognitive bias and explore how that bias can impact how our team works together and what we can do to ensure we don't get caught up in the pitfalls. Because working with people is hard, and the more insights we have into the human condition make it just a little bit easier. To learn more about the Bikeshedding Effect, you can find more resources at cognitioncatalog.com. Sign up for the newsletter to get a new bias in your inbox every week. And make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you never have to worry about falling for any of these cognitive biases again. And if you think you're getting something out of the show, I would really appreciate you leaving a 5-star review. That would help me out so much. And shout out to this week's sponsor, Mobbin. If you're tired of staring at a blank Figma canvas, Mobbin gives you access to over 400,000 beautifully designed UI screens and user flows with a library that grows bigger every week. Kickstart your creativity, streamline your workflow, and level up your design process. Visit mobbin.com/beyondux to get 20% off Mobbin Pro and never run out of inspiration again. And as always, thanks so much to Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin, Jason, Michelle, Marty, Tino, Adina, and Zoe for all their support. And if you want to join these fine folks and many others and help keep the show independent and ad-free, you'll get exclusive access to the entire video library of episodes, including episodes before they're even released. For more information on how you can support the show and help more people find out about what we're doing, make sure to check out beyonduxdesign.com/support. When I first read about the bike-shedding effect, also known as the Law of Triviality, by the way, I immediately started with the flashbacks. I'm talking full cinematic PTSD, fluorescent-lit conference rooms, endless Teams meetings, someone sharing their screen with a 17-tab spreadsheet, and all of us just arguing about the pettiest things imaginable. Now, I've talked a lot about my experience working on large software teams in the past, and not surprisingly, this effect was something that we ran into time and time again. It showed up everywhere. I think about the hours, no, days of my life spent locked in debate over tabs versus spaces when formatting code, whether the definition of ready should have that fifth bullet point or not, or the precise wording of our definition of done, as if the fate of the product depended on it. Now, meanwhile, the really meaty problems, the ones that actually would determine our success, they just sat there untouched. But what if we had used that time to figure out how 80 engineers spread across 7 pods and 2 continents could actually collaborate and share knowledge and avoid building the same thing twice? What if we spent our time worrying about how to influence distant, busy executives who saw product delivery in a completely different way than the people actually building it did? I can't help but think that we would have made so much more progress if we had the courage and the structure to tackle those bigger conversations instead of hiding in the easy ones. But hey, I'm a podcaster. What do I know? Now, you've probably been there too, stuck in a meeting, watching the clock, realizing that the decision on the table is barely worth the pixels on the slide deck, while the important stuff quietly collects dust. Well, I can't give you all that time back, but now you have a name for it, and maybe I can help you avoid it in the future. So what exactly is the bike-shedding effect? Well, let's get into it. Well, we tend to focus disproportionate time and energy on trivial or minor details while neglecting the really important things. This cognitive bias often shows up in group decision-making processes, big meetings, where participants tend to give more attention to easy to understand and easy to discuss issues rather than the more complex and critical problems. The phrase bike shedding comes from a British author and naval historian. His name was C. Northcote Parkinson, for a British sounding name. Back in 1957, he wrote a satire on bureaucratic inefficiency. He imagined a committee approving a nuclear power plant design. Faced with complex reactor specifications, the members in the group, they stayed silent. But when the conversation shifted to the design of the plant's bike shed, where everyone would store their bikes, suddenly everyone had strong opinions. The simpler the topic, the easier it was to contribute, so it got all the attention. This observation became known as Parkinson's Law of Triviality. Groups tend to spend more time on decisions that are easy to understand rather than those with the highest stakes. This bias tends to thrive in group settings because weighing in on simple issues carries low risk of embarrassment or being wrong, while complex decisions can feel intimidating or politically sensitive. Parkinson's insights weren't based on a single observation, so that story never actually happened, but it was on his own experience with bureaucracies and committees. Over time, he tended to notice that this pattern repeated in various organizations that he was a part of, and it led him to formulate that principle. Interestingly, the bike shedding effect is just one of several observations that Parkinson made about organizational behavior. His most famous principle is called Parkinson's Law, and that states that work expands to fill the time available. So if you give them 2 weeks to do some work, they'll finish it in 2 weeks. If you give them 4 weeks to do the exact same work, chances are good it'll take 4 weeks. Today, bike shedding can show up in many different places like agile ceremonies, design reviews, steering committees, and even executive offsites. It's not laziness. It's a very human pull towards clarity away from discomfort. Now, unfortunately, that comfort comes at the cost of real progress. Now, in software teams, the bike shedding effect can have a huge impact on productivity and decision-making. Bike shedding can look like a design critique where 20 minutes are spent debating button alignment, leaving no time for the thorny discussions about whether that feature actually addresses the core user needs in the first place. Everyone leaves feeling like they made progress, but the critical strategic decisions remain completely untouched. In engineering, it might be code reviews that spiral into naming debates or fights over tabs and spaces. I have definitely seen that one firsthand, while architectural risks go unmentioned until they become giant, unavoidable problems. Leadership meetings might revolve around rehashing color palette for a marketing campaign because nobody wants to tackle the harder, politically fraught decision of whether or not to cut a failing product line at all. Now, the danger isn't just wasted time, it's a slow cultural drift. If a team repeatedly avoids the hard conversations, people start to believe that avoidance is the norm, and important decisions often get deferred until a crisis forces them to deal with it. The most talented people will often disengage because the work feels performative instead of impactful, and over time, the team's problem-solving muscle will weaken, making high-stakes decisions even harder to face. So let's talk about how your team can combat the bike shedding effect. First, recognize the signs of bike shedding during discussions. It's incredibly common to get distracted by trivial matters, but stay alert when minor topics dominate the conversation. If your team spends excessive time on small details, it's a good sign to steer the decision towards more important issues. I used to work on a team that had a little Elmo doll. Elmo stood for enough, let's move on. And when you kept talking about the same thing for too long, someone would pick up the doll and throw it at you, say, Elmo, enough, let's move on. I always thought that was funny. You could try that. Next, use agendas that highlight a decision's impact. It's easy to get sidetracked, so make a list of important topics before meetings and put the critical items first. And before meetings, label the agenda items with their potential business or project impact. This can create a visual reminder of which topics really deserve more time and focus over others. Share this agenda beforehand, please, for the love of God. Whether you're dealing with bike shedding or not, have an agenda for your meetings. Use it to guide discussions and time box so you don't waste your time. This also helps prevent drift to less important topics, and it makes the meetings way more productive. Next, use time boxing in meetings. Set a firm limit for discussion on minor topics. Once the time's up, it's up. Either decide quickly or delegate the decision to a smaller group offline or later so that the rest of the meeting can move forward. Again, a little Elmo doll comes in incredibly handy here. Next, use outside facilitators if you can for the really important discussions. When you're deeply involved, it's a lot easier to miss the forest for the trees. Outside facilitators, objective third parties with a fresh perspective can see conversations going sideways early. They can keep that meeting on track and prevent focus on the small details and encourage thinking about the bigger picture. And then lastly, break down complex issues into approachable parts. One of the reasons teams avoid big topics is because they feel overwhelming. By splitting up those complex decisions into smaller, more digestible components, you make it easier for the people to engage and reduce the pull towards those trivial matters. Well, all right, y'all, that's it for the Cognition Catalog for today. I hope I helped shed a little bit of light on what the bike shedding effect is and how we can avoid some of those pitfalls at home and at work. But I'm curious, have you run into any issues related to the bike shedding effect before? How much time have you actually wasted? Are you scared to count? I am. How'd you get through it? I'd love to hear about it. Let me know what you think on LinkedIn or shoot me an email at hello@beyonduxdesign.com. I'd love to hear from you. To learn more about the bike shedding effect, you can find more resources at cognitioncatalog.com. Sign up for the newsletter to get a new bias in your inbox every week, and make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you never have to worry about falling for any of these cognitive biases again. And if you think you're getting something out of the show, I would really appreciate you leaving a 5-star review. That would help me out so much. And if you want to pick up some big, beautiful art prints of some select biases, make sure to check out beyonduxdesign.com/shop. Get free shipping on all orders over $30 and use the promo code LISTENER to get 10% off your entire order. And if you have a favorite bias that you want to see in print, let me know. I'd be happy to take requests. And if you're tired of staring at a blank Figma canvas, Mobbin gives you access to over 400,000 beautifully designed UI screens and user flows with a library that grows bigger every week. Kickstart your creativity, streamline your workflow, and level up your design process. Visit mobbin.com/beyondux to get 20% off Mobbin Pro and never run out of inspiration again. Help keep the show independent and ad-free. Check out beyonduxdesign.com/support to find out how. You can join Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin, Jason, Michelle, Marty, Tino, Adina, and Zoe, and many others, and help keep the show independent and ad-free. You'll get exclusive access to the entire video library of episodes, including episodes before they're even released. Get instant access to those videos right now for as little as $5 a month. And until next time, remember, you're more than a designer because there's more to UX and design. I'll see you around. Take care, y'all.